Haribo, Namaste, Krishna, Krishna. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimati Sirasarupananda Paramahansa Kritinami Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimati Sirasarupananda Paramahansa Kritinamine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimati Sirasarupananda Paramahansa Kritinamine Namo Sirasarupananda Paramahansa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Kristaya Namo Sirasarupananda Paramahansa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Kristaya Sirasarupananda Paramahansa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Kristaya Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Devasesha Sunyavate Vaskachari Satarine Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Devasesha Sunyavate Vaskachari Satarine Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Paskachari Satarini Panchashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Harita Gadadhara Asiko Bhakta-vrinda Panchashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Harita Gadadhara Asariko Bhakta-vrinda Panchashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Harita Gadadhara Asariko Bhakta-vrinda Panchashi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Harita Gadadhara Asariko Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gauranga, Gauranga, Nityananda, Nityananda, Gauranga, Gauranga, Radha Krishna Vrindavan, 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 Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Haribo, Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parivajika Satara Satta Shishima Jagaguru, Sudaswarupananda, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parivajika Satara Satta Shishima, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Mission Ki Jai. Navadvita Dhamma Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath, Shyamakun Radhakun, Kira Govardhani Ki Jai. Vrindavan ki jai, Mathura ki jai, Mayapur ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. For speaking, first I offer my humble obeisances at the lotus feet of my spiritual master, Jagakuru Siddhasarupananda Srila Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada is the mercy manifestation of Lord Chaitanya, and is very dear to Radha and Krishna. I offer my humble obeisances at the lotus feet of all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are like wish-fulfilling trees, able to fulfill all the desires of the fallen living entities, and are full of compassion upon them. Haribo, Namaste. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So we're continuing with chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita. And in this chapter, Krishna is beginning to conclude his main discussion on Karma Yoga that's been going on since the second chapter. And he's kind of tying it together. In chapter 4, Krishna began speaking about transcendental knowledge. So he talks about Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, acting in a mood of detachment from the results, being equal in happiness and distress, performing one's duty because it's the right thing to do. It's the way that Krishna has arranged things. One should perform one's prescribed duties. One's prescribed duties are according to the Varnashram system. These are, sometimes these are called religious duties, right? That's why they're religious, because it's Krishna's Varnashram system. He's the one who set it up. So, but then a bit of a change in chapter 4, where Krishna begins to speak about transcendental knowledge, how to acquire it, or different ways of acquiring it, different processes, including even the pranayama, breathing processes. Also talks about Karma Yoga. Then he begins to talk about how one can approach a bona fide spiritual master who can initiate you into transcendental knowledge, because the spiritual master, all the words used actually is Tattvadashinaha, so a seer of the truth. Tat means truth, the essential essence of something. And thatness. Tat means that, actually, so it's like that. And twa means ness, so thatness. So that's like the essential essence of something. It's thatness. And anyway, and then he goes on to describe the glories of transcendental knowledge. And then, Arjuna became a little confused. Well, because Arjuna still has this confusion about, should I act or not act? There was a question from the last class about this point about action and inaction and action, and how one should act. This is very much the subject of Bhagavad Gita. It's all about how one should act, in fact, in one sense. And we see it played out through whether Arjuna should act. Anyway, so at the beginning of chapter 5, Arjuna is thinking again, well, I don't really want to perform this action that you want me to do, Krishna. So again he asks for Krishna to please, tell me what is it you want me to do? you want me to fight or not fight? What's most auspicious for me? What is Shreyas? And then Krishna then sort of ties things together and explains to Arjuna that really Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga, Krishna's calling it Sankhya Yoga, he's also calling it Sannyas Yoga, are really one and the same thing. They're just sort of different steps along the way. So in Karma Yoga, one works with detachment, detached from the results. And one who's attained knowledge, transcendental knowledge, and we'll be speaking about this more in the tonight's verse, Bhagavad Gita 5, chapter 5, text 20, is that one who is in knowledge is detached, and they're equal in happiness and distress. And Krishna goes on to says that such a person is actually situated in Brahman, or transcendence. So this word Brahman is subject of great discussion. What does Brahman mean? From the Sankaracharya and the impersonalist point of view, Brahman refers to the Brahma Jyoti, and of course the spiritual light emanating from Krishna, his effulgence, the effulgence of his spiritual planet, this Krishna Loka. So, and essentially everything is resting upon this effulgence. Like this effulgence is the Brahma Jyoti, the spiritual white light, is spread all throughout the spiritual world. And the whole material world, the Mahatattva, the Pradhana, is resting upon this Brahman. So everything rests upon Brahman in the Brahma Jyoti, in the sense that Sankaracharya is speaking of it. But Krishna is the Para Brahman. So the Vaishnavas consider the supreme Brahman. Para means supreme, or Para, Param, supreme. So Krishna is the supreme Brahman. And Arjuna states this in chapter 10 after Krishna speaks what's known as the Chaito Shloki, the 4 essential verses of Bhagavad Gita, or seed verses. Actually, this idea of seed verses, it's Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita likened these 4 verses, chapter 10, text 8 to 11, to the 4 seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 2, chapter 9, texts 32 to 35, I believe they are. And these are seen as the seed verses. This is Lord Vishnu speaking to Lord Brahma at the beginning of the universe. And he speaks, Lord Brahma finds himself on a lotus flower. It's dark all around. He doesn't know what to do. He hears the sound, the syllables, Sanskrit syllables, tapa, tapa, right? Austerity or penance. So he figures he would sit on his lotus flower and meditate. And whilst doing so, he receives a beautiful vision of the spiritual world. This is described. His vision is described within the Brahma Samhita. That's also chapter 5, which is the only chapter we have of the Brahma Samhita. But it's also described to some extent in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, chapter 9. But anyway, so then after he's had this wonderful vision, he's just, it's just wonderful, spiritual vision. Then Lord Vishnu appears, and there's a conversation where Lord Vishnu, Narayana, speaks these 4 seed verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has likened chapter 10, text 8 to 11 to being the seed verses of the Bhagavad Gita. And so these 4 verses, they speak, first of all, Krishna says that he is the source of everything. It's the source of all the material and spiritual worlds. Aham savasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. I'm the source of everything, and everything emanates from me. And then he goes on to say that the wise who know this worship me with all their hearts. So he speaks about the devotees. And he speaks further about how the devotees are just thinking about him constantly and speaking about him and deriving great pleasure from this, transcendental blissfulness, from thinking about Krishna and speaking about Krishna. Is very joyful. And then he says that to those who are constantly worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So then there's for a more active relation. First of all, Krishna is speaking about who he is, that he is the supreme person and the source of everything. Then he speaks about the glories of his devotees. Then he speaks about his relationship with them, that those who are constantly devoted to him and worship him with love, he gives them the understanding by which they can come to me, to him. And then he says how he destroys the darkness of ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge for his devotees. This is how they get to come to him, because their ignorance is destroyed by the shining lamp of knowledge. So anyway, these are like the, sorry, I'm sort of giving a bit of a chapter here on, a class here on chapter 10, and we're still back in chapter 5. So anyway, something to look forward to over the next number of years as we finally move up through more chapters. Actually, chapter 6 will go kind of quickly because it's all quicker, as we'll do more than one verse a night. But the point that was originally trying to make, which I'm sort of forgotten why I got into this topic of the Chaitya Shloki, of these 4 seed or essential verses of the Bhagavad Gita. I was saying something about it in relation to chapter 5. Anyway, it'll probably come to me later, but sorry for that. A little bit disjointed. I definitely had some reason for bringing it up. Anyway, so we were talking about what was happening in chapter 4 and chapter 5, how Krishna was tying things together for Arjuna. Explaining that that Kama Yoga, about detachment, performing things because they should be done, but generally this idea of being detached from the fruit, being detached from the results. In other words, doing one's duty because it should be done, but without attachment to the results. That the success and failure is in the hands of the Supreme, not in my hands. And so one who has achieved transcendental knowledge is in the same situation. They're equal in happiness and distress. They're detached from the results. They know who they are, that they're not the body, that they're part and parcel, that they're spiritual in essence, eternal Atma, or soul. So this body actually has nothing to do with us. In fact, even, in one verse, Krishna is speaking about what's known as Sankhya, where he's saying, well, actually, the soul has nothing to do at all. It's all just being done by the body. And then further describes it as, and the soul has nothing to do with it. Right? In reality, that's the reality. The body is acting. My hand is moving. But the soul, spirit soul, is completely separate from the body. So in that sense, the soul is not acting. I managed to remember there what I was, why I brought all this up, but I then managed to forget again. Oh, I was talking about Brahman, right? Talking about Brahman, how Krishna is the Para Brahman. So anyway, so after speaking this Chaito Shloki, or these 4 verses, then some commentators on Bhagavad Gita say that Krishna goes quiet because he's thinking about the love of his devotees for him. Right? He's described how his devotees are constantly absorbed in thinking about him, and how he then helps them come to him, and how with the shining lamp of knowledge he destroys their ignorance, again making it so that they can come to him. Then Krishna, according to commentators, goes quiet. And, so then Arjuna has an opportunity to speak. And Arjuna he's not asking a question. He then begins to glorify Krishna. And he starts by saying, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. So Param Brahma, so this is Para Brahman. Krishna, you are the Para Brahman. You are the Supreme Brahman. You are this, you are the source of Brahman. You are the Supreme Brahman. Krishna, in fact, of course, states this in chapter 14, text 27, when he says, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the basis of the Brahman. And I am the basis, it goes on to say, which is the basis of happiness and dharma and so on. But anyway, so Arjuna is saying to Krishna, you are the Supreme Brahman. You are the Param Dhamma, the supreme refuge, or the supreme resting place. So in Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's introduction to Bhagavad Gita as it is, he explains how we should have Arjuna's attitude as we study Bhagavad Gita. We should at least be open to the idea, that Krishna is God, is the Supreme, and we should be following in Arjuna's footsteps. Arjuna's approach to Krishna is to say, you are the Supreme Brahman. And, Arjuna goes on to say, that all the great sages, Narada, Devala, are all saying this about you. So Arjuna is saying it, the great sages are saying it, and now you yourself are saying it. Krishna, you are saying it. So this is the approach, this is the mood in which one should approach Bhagavad Gita. Of course, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is not talking about Krishna as being the Supreme Brahman or the Supreme Lord. In fact, he's arguing with him, fighting with him. No, I don't want to fight. Why are you making me do this? This is terrible. Right? Arjuna's acting in a very emotional way. He's becoming, crying and distraught and full of compassion. Compassion, of course, is an emotion. And, Arjuna is being very emotional. So, of course, at the beginning of chapter 2, Krishna wakes him up. Whack, not physically, but kind of wakes him up. Why are you overcome with weakness? What are you doing? What are you doing, Arjuna? Wake up. Don't be so emotional about things. You're giving up your manhood, becoming like a man-woman. If that's politically correct kind of thing to say these days, probably not. I almost hesitated to say it, not wanting to offend anyone. But this Krishna is like waking Arjuna up, trying to bring him to his senses, out of this emotional state, become practical, see the situation as it is here. Arjuna again reacts even more emotionally. Oh my God, Krishna, this calls Krishna Ari Sudana and slayer of demons. Krishna, you slay demons, but you're asking me to slay Bhishma and Drona. How can I do that? These are worshipable superiors. Text 4, chapter 2. But anyway, so Arjuna comes a long way from there throughout this wonderful transcendental discussion that's taking place on the battlefield here between Krishna and Arjuna, where Arjuna is, by the time Krishna speaks, the Chaito Shloki, the chapter 10, text 8 to 11, then Arjuna is responding with Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam, Purusham Sashvatam Divyam Adi Deva Mijam Vibhahum. Adi Deva, you are the original God. Purushatam, you are the Supreme Person. Purusha is person, Uttama is supreme, topmost. You are the Supreme Person. So this Arjuna has come like a long way from chapter 2, chapter 1 and chapter 2. So anyway, that's kind of a bit of an overview of where we are. I kind of tend to do this each week. But anyway, so we're up to a section, a sequence of verses that kind of started with chapter 16, text 16. Well, Krishna says, however one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So Krishna is describing an enlightened person, a liberated person. So we talk about liberation. What is this liberation that Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita? Sometimes Bhagavad Gita is described as a moksha dhamma. A moksha shastra. What does this mean? Moksha means liberation. So there is, within the Vedic literatures, there's the Karmakand, which is the section of the Vedas that deals with fruitive activities, karma. So sometimes this word karma, applies to action in general, to action and reaction, and it also applies to fruitive activities as prescribed by the Vedas in the Vedic literatures, in the Karmakanda section of the Vedas. And so in this section there's ritual activities that one performs in order to get elevated to the heavenly planets. Anyway, so this, and then in addition to the Karmakand section of the Vedas, which is the original Vedas, then there is the Upanishads. And the Upanishads are usually associated with one of the four Vedas. But the Upanishads are described as moksha shastra. They're about liberation. And generally, most of out of the 108 principal Upanishads, 8 of them are Vaishnava, talking about Krishna, the Supreme Person. The rest of them are generally very much kind of impersonal, merging into the Brahman. So this kind of liberation. But Bhagavad Gita, Krishna covers so many aspects of liberation. And he uses many different words to describe it. So there's different characteristics. So, the ultimate liberation, of course, is to return to the spiritual world. Not merging within the Brahman, but going to Krishna Loka, Krishna's planet, and engaging in a loving relationship with Krishna in one of the four primary rasas of either Dasya, servant, Sakya, friend, Vatsalya, family member, parent, and Madhurya as a consort, loving consort. So this is, of course, the ultimate liberation. And Krishna he didn't describe these particular rasas, but he does describe going to the spiritual world and describing how it's there's no sun or moon or electricity, that it's effulgent. And he says that one who goes, it's in chapter 15, and that one who goes there does not return to this temporary, miserable material world. So Krishna describes a little bit this liberation of attaining the spiritual planets. But elsewhere, generally, throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking about liberation from fruitive results. And liberation from the worst kind of fear. The first time Krishna starts talking about liberation is that when he's saying that one who pursues this path of Buddhi Yoga is sometimes described or likened to or called Kamaya Buddhi, means intelligence. Buddhi Yoga is sometimes likened to Kama Yoga, but also to Bhakti Yoga, because Krishna uses this term Buddhi and Buddhi Yoga throughout Bhagavad Gita, and sometimes it's very clearly devotional service or bhakti. Other times it's more about karma. So anyway, Krishna then describes some of the characteristics of a person who is enlightened with knowledge, and how they are liberated. So he speaks about, when one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, in Brahman, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, outcast. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman. So this Brahman is Atma, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, right? I'm spiritual in essence. And they're already situated in Brahman. So in this sense, being situated within Brahman is to mean being situated within truth, within the spiritual truth, the transcendence. And then tonight's verse, a person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is to be understood as already situated in transcendence. The Sanskrit, so na parishet priyam prapya, no dvijait prapya cha priyam, stira buddhi rasamudo brahmavid brahmani sthitaha, na parishet priyam prapya, na dvijait prapya cha priyam, stira buddhi rasamudo brahmavid brahmani sthitaha. So, na, never, prahishyat, rejoice or excessively elated, excited, priyam, pleasant, the cherished, the dear, the preferred, prapya, achieving, on achieving, attaining or reaching. So, one who's in knowledge, situated in Brahman, enlightened with knowledge, he doesn't rejoice upon receiving something pleasant. This is something materially pleasant. Krishna will go on to explain that the liberated person has joy within. His joy does not come from something outside, something external. His joy, or his blissfulness, or his ananda, Krishna doesn't use the term ananda in the text. We'll discover next week what the term is. But his joy is coming from within. his realization that he's spiritual in essence. And this is liberating in itself, to appreciate that I'm spiritual in essence, that I'm not the body. This is like Brahman realization, the beginning, Aham Brahmasmi, I'm spirit. But beyond that then is one who is further realized and has appreciates, no, I'm not the Supreme Spirit. I am the part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit. I'm a small spiritual spark of the Supreme Lord. So this is my position. I'm dominated part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. I'm not the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada's science of identity. My essence, position, and then my function. My function is as the servant of the Supreme Lord. And having a loving relationship with him in one rasa or mood or another. So, of course, one who is, it's described like the blissfulness that comes from liberation. In other words, realizing I'm Brahman, I'm spiritual in essence. And even of merging into the Brahman, merging into the Brahma Jyoti, leaving this body, either out through the top of the head or some other way at the end of one's life, merging into the Brahman. So this is likened in the Nectar Devotion, in a text quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami, as being like the water in a calf's hoof print, when compared against the blissfulness that is like an ocean of one who's in a loving relationship with Krishna. So I've told a story of an experience I had in mediation one time. Mediating divorces, wonderful fun. But anyway, I had this experience with this couple who were getting divorced, and anyway, it had a big impact on me. It was very sort of traumatic. It was very sort of stressful. The woman was all in tears, and anyway, it was just very sort of, had this sort of impact on me. It was like, oh wow, that was like a really heavy experience. So anyway, so the next day I was sort of like, Googling things about, separation counseling, and anyway, there's all this sort of material that was talking about how, how people find their, what people tend to call soulmates, right? They find their spouse, right? The one that they're going to enter into a loving relationship with. And, this anyway, they're describing how when one falls in love, we can call it lust, right? It's lust. It's material, there is no real material love, because it's always, of course, self-centered. It's about you pleasing me. You make me happy, right? So I'm finding my happiness from this person. But anyway, the point is that when a person is in love, lust, right? This, in a loving relationship with a spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, there's these chemical reactions that take place in the body, where I think they call them serotonins, or I'm not sure of that though. But anyway, it's kind of like little explosions going off, like this happiness. Oh, I feel so happy. I'm achieving union with this person. And this can be like, just like this feeling of we're meant to be together, of being united. And of course there may be sexual union as well, which tends to even intensify it, this feeling of being united and being one, being we say they're a couple, but they're like in one. I was at this retreat, this recent retreat on Oahu, and wonderful retreat. Wonderful retreat. Anyway, there was this one person was afterwards was sort of saying to me, talking about, their relationship, and how sort of close they feel, and they're sort of asking me, oh well, how do everyone sort of feels like this, or I should feel like this because other people feel like this. And I said, no, everybody has a different relationship. Some people are really close and others are really separate. And I sort of said, well, gosh, man, like at the retreat, there's some couples there, they're just like glue, man. They're just like stuck together. Every meal sitting next to each other, during the Kirtan standing next to each other. It's almost like they don't do anything apart. They do everything together. Right? Anyway, so there's this sense of union. There's this happiness. No, we're meant to be together. We're kind of like, like twins almost in a womb, right? They're like together. And if you're sort of wondering where I'm going with this. Anyway, so like there's so much happiness that can come from that, right? So you have these minute individual spirit souls. Minute, right? We're just little tiny parts and parcels, little spiritual sparks of the Supreme, right? And we get into this relationship with another minute, tiny spiritual spark of the Supreme, and we experience this sense of union. And from this sense of union can come a lot of happiness. Of course, unfortunately, in the material world, all way, way, way too often, it leads to become in future a source of great distress and pain and misery and divorce. And oh my God, it's terrible, right? But anyway, if there can be so much happiness and bliss from this union or yoga with another minute spiritual spark of the Supreme, just imagine how much blissfulness and happiness there is when you enter into a loving relationship with Krishna, the all-attractive person. And of course, you're already in that loving relationship. It's already there. This love for Krishna is innate within us. And it just needs to be reawakened, woken up. Lord Chaitanya says to Srila Shukadeva Sanatana Goswami, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhikavanaya Shravanari Sudashite Karayu Udaya. Nitya Siddha, you are eternally perfect. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema. You have this eternal, perfect, loving relationship with Krishna. Shravanadi. It gets awakened through the process of hearing, Shravanam, hearing, Adi, meaning that this is the first one. So he's referring to the 9 processes of devotional service that Prahlad Maharaj quotes to Hiranyakashipu when he's asked, what's the best thing you've learned? Right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. The 9 processes of devotional service. So anyway, so this loving relationship is there, and this process of bhakti yoga, sadhana bhakti, bhakti yoga in practice, awakens this, or uncovers it, reestablishes this loving relationship that we have with the Supreme Lord. And this is so blissful. This is complete bliss. But this is like the ocean of bliss, and Srila Rupa Goswami is comparing it to the bliss of just liberation, of merging in Brahman, and the realization that I'm spiritual in essence, actual Atma Tattva, realization of the self, the truth of the self, is compared to the happiness in a calf's hoof print. And of course, material happiness is, by the Transcendentalists, is not considered happiness at all. It's really just seen as, something fleeting and temporary. Now, this doesn't mean that a devotee or a Vaishnava goes around trying to experience pain. Of course, if it's a nice sunny day, this is nice, right? But Krishna is saying here that we don't rejoice or become excessively elated or we become super excited just because some nice thing is happening. This is the samatvam. We were speaking a lot last week, I believe, about samatvam, and probably the week before that, and many times in the past, right? This sense of equanimity, this sameness, this being equal in happiness and distress. So this is an essential characteristics of Karma Yoga, and here Krishna is now describing it as being an essential characteristic, or the symptom of transcendental knowledge, of realization, of being liberated in the Supreme, of being situated in Brahman. And nor laments upon attaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent. This is sthira buddhihi, self-intelligence. Sthira means situated, steady. Buddhi is intelligence. Unbewildered. Well, self-intelligent, unbewildered, asamudaha. Unbewildered, not deluded, unconfused. And who knows the science of God. So this is Brahma, Vit, Brahma, the truth. Vit means knowing it. Knowing the science of God is to be understood, is already situated in transcendence, a Brahmani, in the transcendence, in the absolute, in Brahman, sthita, situated, established, or abiding. Krishna. I hope you don't mind, I tend to rave on a little bit. I always sort of don't get to speak enough about the verse itself. But anyway, I hope you find it helpful. So thank you so much for listening. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Haribo, Namaste, Krishna, thank you so much. Krishna, Krishna.